Because today's an ideal day for fireside chats, Andrew. It's been pouring with rain here in Cape Town for 3 days now.
Oh.
And one of the things we're going to have a sort of a stew for lunch. And believe it or not, Pete Barnett's coming for lunch.
Oh,
there you go. Yeah. So, in fact, I don't want to start with school, actually. I mean, we were all there. We know what happened. There were some great times. There were some lousy times. I mean, the discipline that was inflicted upon us, I'm sure everybody's been talking about it. In fact, I had a beer with Larry a couple of years ago. And, we shared this continual sense of fear whilst we were at school. And it shouldn't have been like that, man. It's yes, we shouldn't dwell on the negative, but that is one of my abiding memories of school. The abuses by the likes of Oosthuizen and Van Niekerk and others, they kind of stick. And I think Whiteford as well. I mean, he was an intellectual bully. I mean, when he lectured at varsity, he was the most wonderful person. I mean, that Latin lesson, I think you were in it as well, weren't you? We did that as Oak's Feast. And he was incredibly humorous and a true gentleman. But, I mean, we lived in abject fear of the fella at school. And school shouldn't have been like that, man. And, schools have changed. I've got a friend, I do a lot of climbing with him. Torben Weeborg. He's now the Doodles de Kock of SACS High. He's the senior biology teacher there. Anyway, we climb together, and I mean, the relationship he has with his students or pupils or whatever you call them these days, what the modern term is so different. And there's none of that sort of fear-mongering. So, and discipline, and with it that kind of sarcasm to belittle other people that was very much part of the makeup of the school. But all that said, I mean, we were amazingly privileged to be able to go to that school. Besides that, besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the show? It was a wonderful place. We had incredibly good teachers. Math, science, history. I'm not going to name all those teachers. I'm going to be here all day. But we had wonderful sport as well. I mean, you were a hockey player, if memory serves me correctly. I played rugby, the B side, played cricket B side, in high school, and we had good sides, good teams. So, that about sums up school for me. I mean, junior school, I think my worst. Yes. Okay. So, in terms of teachers, I would say that the teachers I really enjoyed, Jock Campbell. I don't use his other nickname. I think it was, it's unfair on the fella. Him, Doug Brown, believe it or not, he was also a very moody bully, but he taught me so much about life through poetry and through English. Things like transcendent love. I mean, when I was in my 40s, I got divorced. And I really found out what it was like to be Lear on the moors. He taught me a lot. I felt very uneasy in his class, though, with that sort of discipline and moodiness of his. John Ince was a lovely guy. He was a great educator, but a poor teacher because he couldn't teach very well, I don't think. But, I think we'd all die for John Ince, man. He was a wonderful person and a family friend eventually because he lived in Dean Street and he lived in the flat upstairs from us for a while. Andre Abrams, very unique individual. But he taught me a lot about psychology in sport, and also the technicalities of playing cricket. In fact, at the time, I thought he was a little too technical for a 14-year-old guy to be teaching him that level of technique. But he was a great coach and a great individual. Psychology of sport, just an attitude towards playing the game, being positive, being chirpy, rising to the occasion, being strong, and trying to dominate the bowling, all of that stuff. It was just really an attitude in which you play the game, and it goes beyond merely playing the shots. It's dealing with fear of, say, opening the batting, that sort of stuff, and facing at least fast bowlers, and just applying your psyche to deal with it. That's what I remember about him. So
that was very advanced for those days.
Yeah, no, he was a very advanced teacher, and I mean, I know that he was a great mentor, say, to the likes of Peter Kirsten. They used to talk a lot out of school when Peter was playing cricket, and he was a good guy. Let me try and think of other teachers who were inspiring.
Graham, just love. Do you want to just riff on that for a minute?
Yeah. Well, when you sort of get divorced and it's not your choice, you sense deeply how you love despite the rejection, that comes with it. And, I think also, not so much with my sons, but, they've never really, done anything bad or wrong or anything to say, reject me or anything like that. But, you just love them in a way that that they could do anything, but you'd always be there for them. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. It's a truism. So you'd always be there for them. I suppose, getting cross with your wife. I'm remarried. I've married Linda. In fact, it's a wonderful marriage. She's a wonderful woman. Obviously we have our issues at times and different approaches to life. And but that regardless, your love, or my love for her is, as I say, it's transcended. It transcends all those issues that you raise.
What did Doug Brown do, or how did Doug Brown influence that view? Because you said, okay, you sort of lived it in your 40s, but you said that Doug Brown introduced you to the idea. What do you mean?
Well, through the teaching of in particular, King Lear. The love for the one daughter that didn't work out, and the daughter's love for him. And I mean, that's where he really taught the lesson about it. I mean, it wasn't just trying to understand that difficult English of Shakespeare, and but it was him. It was Doug going into the mindsets of these people, and teaching a lesson about it in life. And as a teenager, you sort of wonder about it, and you're not really receptive, or old enough and experienced enough to be receptive to it. But then the message comes home, and that's what it did. So Andrew, that's about it. One of the biggest dislikes I ever had, biggest disappointments at school, was being guardian of the banner in Standard 5. The expectation that's sort of part of the disciplinary regime of the school, it really, I disliked it intensely. And I would say at Standard 5 was probably the most unhappy and worst year of my schooling life. I disliked it, and let me not dwell on it anymore.
Oh, no, dwell on it. Why? Who was your teacher?
It was Henshelwood. Peter Henschel. He was fantastic, but, Cam, nothing wrong with that. But, he wasn't part of, that I saw really. I mean, he used his personality and influence rather than, disciplinary stuff. He was a good teacher.
So what were you rubbing up against?
Sorry?
What were you rubbing up against? What was making it unpleasant? What was making it unpleasant for you?
No, just having to be this exemplary fellow, for starters, a sort of a goody-goody. And, you're always in the spotlight, maybe a bit ridiculed at times because of who you are. I don't know, the cap just didn't fit with me. I wanted to be free and easy, and, jawing on the, I did, play soccer on the fields with you. Well, it was just what you observed, and that's what prefectures prefecture was all about, being, the eyes and ears of the teachers on the ground and being, a disciplinarian and so on. And, you had to set an example.
Yeah.
The basic definition of good guardian of the banner is the banner stands for, all the good at the school, and you've got to uphold it. And it's quite a responsibility, and project it. So, and, by and large, it was a school run on strict discipline, and that's where you fitted in. So, yeah, Andrew, that's cool.
Interesting.
Listen, just the thought, you mentioned Charles Edelstein. I remember we finished writing Latin matric and then going to Forries and then after to the pig. It was a wonderful occasion. Just to, because I'd never had a sort of social duel with Charles, but that was it. And he was such a wonderful guy, lovely sense of humor. I mean, do you remember I don't know if you were in our class when we were doing that one Midsummer Night's Dream, and Doug Brown had us all in the hall acting out various parts. And the stage, the curtains were closed, and then he stuck his head through the curtain, did Charles, and he went, row, row, like the MGM lion. Oh, it was hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember, my big friend, Gary Folds, he did accounts and, commercial arithmetic, and he was free for about a week. And I was trying to, study Latin for a week, and I couldn't. I was just over it. In fact, I got my worst Latin mark ever in matric. Yeah. That's because, you couldn't read. Yeah. You're just over matric. Yeah.
So then matric's done,
Anyway.
and now what do? You did you go to the army, or what did you do?
Yeah. Fortunately, I was at Youngsfield as a gunner, and the shock from being amongst SACS boys to being amongst the rest of the country, white privileged males, was unbelievable. And experiencing a bit of, English hatred, anti-Semitic hatred amongst those, the PFs. It wasn't pleasant, to put it diplomatically. But you just fit in, because if you don't fit in, you suffer badly. Physically. I saw some buddy or so, guys in the army who were there, national servicemen, attacking and beating up a fellow national serviceman because he didn't quite fit in, and as a result of him, the bungalow got to, go and do, strafdienst and all that sort of stuff. So it was an eye opener and a shock, and as a result, and of course, to have that sort of nationalist politics thrust down your throat, the severe discipline, don't question authority, all that stuff. It was just an absolute nightmare, horrible. And it was a year that I couldn't wait to get finished. And I remember at varsity, every time I got called up for a camp, I found some reason not to go. I think all of us did that. It was a horrible experience. And and of course, the liberal thinking, not only at varsity, but we had that engendered in us, by the likes of John Ince, liberal thought, freedom of thought, expressing it and so on. We were all hoping for, we knew about the Freedom Charter of the ANC, and we all hoped and lived in hope that was going to come to the fore, and so it did eventually. And the Constitution was drafted, and everything looked so cool. Like we were, it was like a dream come true. But what a disappointment! This country. The ANC they've just rotted this country, Andrew. They have looked after themselves. They're corrupt. They don't put their people's interest first. You look at the health, how that has deteriorated. You look at education, how it's been dumbed down, although Torben disagrees with me. He says, no, it's as good as ever. The infrastructure, roads and rail, it's just, deteriorated and become dilapidated. So what a disappointment the ANC, have become, and as governors, I mean, they were great liberators in a sense, but they had no idea about government, and but it's not for me to sit here and that fear that you felt at school was even worse in the army, because you're just so bombarded with what's the word, man? You're indoctrinated by these people, and if you don't, I mean, the foulness of their mouths, and their forcefulness in inflicting this doctrine of nationalism upon you, and black is bad, and terrorists, and it was just so wrong, and obviously you feel this kind of rebellion within you. I mean, I did respond against it. I mean, I was always out on AWOL, because being at Youngsfield, and I got caught once, and I went out the next weekend on AWOL again, just to but fortunately I didn't get caught. But yeah, I mean, that's about as far as one could go about being a rebel, and also rebelling against that, and you dared not speak out against it, because you had a lot of nationalist supporters, if I can put them that way, in your bungalow. And if you sort of step out of line or try and assert your individual way of thinking, you'd suffer for it. So yeah, you just creep into your shell, do what you got to do, learn how to clean your rifle and shoot it, and pray for the day. 40 days, and and eventually getting out of the army, being discharged, was wonderful. And then getting onto campus, I mean, what a wonderful change that was. Freedom of thought, all that critical analysis, and so on. It was so great. And of course, lectures. I mean, I did BCom LLB, so we didn't do history, we didn't do Kegel, remember that, comparative African government and law. But I did accounts A and accounts B. Struggled with those, but got there eventually. Our law lectures were, I mean, you attended those lectures with me, didn't you? I mean, that jurisprudence in particular, that was amazing. Dennis Davis. I mean, Dennis, wasn't he a lovely guy? I think he still is. He hasn't passed on yet, has he? No. He was a fantastic lecturer. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and there was this. I actually wrote a sup in criminal law, but you talk about your sort of leisurely years at varsity getting your degrees. Well, I took 6 years and a 5-year combination of BCom LLB, and of course, whenever I talk about it, I always say, no, well, I took 6 years because I did BCom LLB and honors in surfing, and which is very true. I mean, that was very much me at the time. Yes. And it was really a wonderful thing, surfing. It was just such an incredibly liberating existence. Living off very little. The back seat of a combi, sleeping there. Well, not back seat. A bed in the back of a combi with a gas ring. Park in the bushes, surf, go up the coast, and so on. It was absolutely wonderful. So, yeah. Sorry. Well, I had a girlfriend at the time, Claire, wonderful woman. I used to go with her. I used to go with Greg Boyd and Gary Foles as well. Yeah, I mean, we were quite a crowd, and had quite a few very funny occasions. What can I remember? Yeah, driving up to East London to surf at Nahoon Reef, driving through what was then the Sky, and there's a guy standing with a big basket of pineapples, and we stopped, and he said, "How much for a pineapple?" He says, R1. So we gave him R1, and he opened the combi door and emptied his entire basket of pineapples into the combi. And, we ate pineapples up and down the coast. And in addition to that, we had a wineskin, one of those Italian or Spanish wineskins that was always full of Tassenberg. And we'd have pineapples and tussies, then get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go surfing. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy, crazy. I remember riding a wave at Nahoon. I couldn't see the wave because the sun was just rising and it was reflecting off the water, and the glare was blinding. You couldn't see the wave, but it was great. Great sense of freedom. I loved my surfing days. But as you start articles and get married, tide, sandbanks, swell, and wind direction, they don't determine your life anymore. We can't afford to. And weekend surfing was always crowded, and I sort of lost interest in surfing, and I had to spend more time at home. And then, of course, sons arrived, and you talked about your feeling that you shouldn't have been in law. I do a lot of litigation and collection work, and I'm always in the courts. That's not really me. It's not really what I should have been or wanted to be. But I think in a way, you sort of revered the idea. I mean, I was at Sonnenberg, Hoffman, Golombek, as it then was. And, you have these mentoring guys, above you, the partners, and you think, gee, I want to be like that, and I want to do well, and I want to achieve, and I want to be a good litigator, and so on. But you soon realize it's not the real you. And you were so lucky, Andrew, to pick that up, because in truth, I should have done something to do with nature. And I was hoping we'd get there and that I could talk about it, because, with my divorce, I got to do a lot of hiking and trails. I met a group of people who are very into it. One of them was, in fact, Liz Eglinton. I don't know if you ever remember. She's a great long-distance runner, and she won the what was that marathon that he ran around Chapman's Peak, and so on. She ran it. Was it 2 Oceans? Yeah, that's what it is. And it's an ultra marathon, and she used to win it regularly, and she was working at Investec, who was which was a client of Sonnenberg's, and I met up with her, and we used to go hiking these trails. And I've done hiking trails from the Naukluft in the middle of Namibia, all the way around those mountains, Namakwaland, down along the Southern Cape, up to the Drakensberg. And it's been a wonderful part of my life. And through that, I also started climbing, peaks in the Cederberg in particular, and the Koabokkerveld. And just that love of the outdoors and being in nature and being self-sufficient, a bit like, surfing, but, even more so. And that chap Torben I mentioned, the senior biology teacher, he and I have had some amazing adventures. I've climbed, I think, 38 peaks in the Cederberg alone. And often it involves putting a backpack on your back, stuffing it with, obviously, tent, sleeping bag, and food, a little bit of whiskey and wine as well. And just heading out into the wilderness, no path, knowing, he's a fundi on GPS. He can find his way in the dark, point to point. So good guy to be with. And we go and camp in the mountains and go and climb peaks and have a whale of a time. And that really, showed me that, being let's call it an 8 till 7 p.m., 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. lawyer, and stressing about the work you haven't got to, that's not me, man. It shouldn't have been me, but it is. I mean, obviously, having children, you can't just stop what you're doing and, changing stream, changing horses. So I had to stick to what I knew and what was earning me some money, and being able to pay school fees and put food on the table and, pay the rent or the bond or whatever it was. So you kind of get stuck in there and you just can't get out of it. And, now, 65, when they both of those boys are now independent, it's a bit late to change. But I still go out onto the mountains and hike and scramble and do the likes. I don't know if you saw that little thing I did at the Saturday morning. I don't know if you're able to see those pictures of the mountains.
I did.
Yeah. And you know, I think one of the pinnacles of that whole experience, Andrew, was climbing Kilimanjaro. Yeah, what happened was, you know, I was going through a divorce, and a mate of mine that I met phoned me one day. He was going through the same thing. He picked up the phone to me and he said one word. He said, Kilimanjaro. And I said to him, Henk, I'm there. Let's go. And we organized it, and we ended up, we were a group of 4 people in, you know, our group, and 2 guides. And these guides realized that we weren't just normal average hikers. You know, we had a lot of we challenged a lot, and good sense of humor, and we fit and so on. And they took us up this route called the Arrow Glacier route, which is not climbed by everybody. It's not the normal one they climb. And that was my first experience of scrambling. You know, that scrambling is when you're sort of using all 4s and you're going up some, you know, fairly steep pitches. I remember in the dead of night at, so call it 4,000, no, in fact, 5,000 meters or thereabouts. I mean, the air is so thin, you can hardly breathe. So there we were, minus 10 degrees, in thin altitude, dead of night, and doing the first scrambling I'd ever done. And at one stage, the guide said to me, don't look down. And of course you look down, and I was effectively on top of on a cliffside, and way down below me was this glacier, Arrow Glacier. And I thought to myself, you slip off there and it'd be like snakes and ladders. You know, if you survive, you'll be down back at the camp we left, having slid all the way. And it was quite a terrifying experience, particularly that there was ice in all the little handholds and footholds. So you didn't want to slip there. But anyway, we made it up. And I remember I had a slab of 20 Myprodols. Now, that's quite an anti-inflammatory heavy tablet. And there were 6 of us. So there were 4 climbers and 2 guides. And we had such headaches by the time we got there. You know, that sort of cerebral edema wasn't quite there or bad, but it was certainly a heavy headache. And I divvied the entire slab up between the 6 of us. So the 4 climbers got, I think, if there are 20, well, 6 3s are 18. So yeah, we all got 3, and the guys each took an extra 1. So they took 4 Myprodols, and we took 3 just to get rid of that headache. So yeah, that was the experience. But to get up there and see the sun rise at dawn over Africa, and to have that self-confidence, that rejection from divorce and the depression that goes with it, it just lifted me, and it just energized me. You know, I'd restored faith in myself and my own ability, confidence, and it was just such an amazing experience. So yeah, I had to tell you about that and share it. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Gee. How long did it take?
Yeah. So it's a 5-6 day trip, because you know you've got to acclimatize to altitude. You can't just simply go up. You know, your body can't take it. So you sort of, I think you ascend about 700 meters net every day. I mean, you start quite high. I think you start at about 1,900 meters. I mean, well, that's higher than Joburg. Yeah? And you know, Kilimanjaro itself, I mean, it's like putting 5 Table Mountains on top of each other. You know, Table Mountain comes in at you know, 1,089 meters. So you know, 5,895 counted every meter of ascent. So that's pretty high, eh? Yeah. But you know, when you stand there, you look up and you try and imagine looking up another 3 kilometers to the top of Everest. And you know, if you feel the way you do at 5,895, even as just now you feel it, you know, 8,000 meters, 8,800, I think it is, Everest. So
now, Grant, just confirm for me.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro is not part of a range. It stand on its own, or what?
Yeah, it does. But there are other peaks around it. You know, it's a volcanic peak, and there's a huge crater in the middle of it. But the Uhuru Peak is just on the side of the crater, and it's the highest point. And that's where you get to. And but I can't remember the names of the peaks. I mean, I climbed it in September 2000, so it's been a while. But there are other volcanic peaks that are in the area, so it's not a range. It's not like the Drakensberg, which is another wonderful range of mountains. And the Cederberg area, the Cederberg Mountains are made up of various ranges, and it's a vast and expansive area. So that's me hiking and climbing.
Fantastic.
So what else is there?
Your kids
to tell you about?
You got a talented musician son.
Justin, he's flying. Alto sax is his horn of choice. He also plays the others, soprano and baritone he's played, and tenor, and he does well on them. And he goes up to Grahamstown, and he's often requested to accompany musicians who come out from overseas, form parts of their band. I remember last year he said to me, "I'm not looking forward to Grahamstown." So I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I'm under such stress and pressure, having to pick up with these overseas guys, and I don't know their music. They give you the charts the day before, and you've just got to get up there and play at your best level." But fortunately he's able to do it. And what was lovely for me, what did I want to tell you about Justin? He's lecturing improvisation at UCT now. I mean, the essence of jazz is improv. If you can't improvise, you can never be a true jazz musician. Now he's lecturing that at age 34. So, he's achieved a hell of a lot. I'm incredibly proud of him. And one of my proudest moments, Andrew, Pete was here and I was helping him form a reunion concert for Calabash Barn. And I spoke to Justin. I said, "Hey, please, man, just play with him." No. He wasn't interested. And he went overseas with the Zip Zap Circus Band, he and his wife. His wife's also a competent saxophonist, but a classical saxophonist. And she teaches full-time music at Sax Junior, by the way. So there are all these little circles that happen in my life. Anyway, they went over to play in France for 3 months, touring with the Zip Zap Circus to 5,000 people a night. I mean, you can imagine. And it's an acrobatic circus, and the performance of these acrobats, Cape Town based, is just phenomenal, and it was a very popular show. Anyway, Justin got back, and he had 2 days of rehearsals, and the saxophonist they booked wasn't up to scratch to play the likes of that music for Gong Gong by Ossie Bisso, remember that? And of course, the two traffic classics. That's it. And the two traffic classics, Glad and Freedom Rider. And so Pete contacted me so the show was on the Thursday, and he contacted me Monday, said, "Graham, I'm in desperate need of Justin." And I spoke to Justin, and he went along and he played one rehearsal and he just nailed it, and he performed with Calabash Barn. I mean, that was a dream fulfilled for me, man. To see him on stage with Pete and Mike, and he was also Dr. Michael Levy, who plays with the Rudimentals, great guitarist. And in fact, what had happened prior to that was there's a jazz jam session organized by Dan Schout, who's a sort of doyen, an impresario, he's a fantastic musician. He played with Johnny Clegg, by the way. They toured Europe for the world. And now he was a jazz lecturer. Anyway, he organizes these jazz gigs, and the students usually pitch. And Pete said to me, "I'd love to go and have a jam somewhere and play some music." So Justin said to him, "Come to the jazz gig Monday night at Fat Harry's," which is where the reunion was, by the way. And there, Pete steps up, sticks in hand. There's a drum set there, and he drums away for quite a quite a few numbers, and Justin was playing with him, and that was just such a pleasure to see and behold. So look, that's Justin. My younger son, James, incredibly bright guy. I don't know where he gets it from, but he did a BSc. He majored in chemistry and IT, and then he went on to do IT honors. And he's presently working for a startup. They get work from California and do programming and the likes. So he's doing incredibly well in his company. And what a lovely guy. He said to me a week or two ago, he said, "Dad, I want to take you camping. We're going to the Cederberg somewhere. You choose, and it's just you and me." And we went off to the Eastern Cederberg, a camp called Newlands, and it's a fairly rudimentary campsite. And yeah, we traveled through the Ceres Gedo Pass, the back of the Cederberg. It's mainly dirt roads and mountains, and very little there. And we arrived at Newlands, set up camp, just the two of us, bride there. The next morning I said, "Come, let's go and nail Klipop Kop," which is about a 9-hour hike. And he said, "No, Dad, that's not what this is about." He says, "We're going to climb Rooiberg, which is one of the peaks that's nearby. And it's only about a 3 to 4 hour climb. And we're going to sit back here, have a few beers, and then we're going to make potjiekos." And that's exactly what we did. And we had a whale of the time, the two of us, just, connecting and being together. And he's got such a lovely personality, soft, but very, a deep, incisive mind, philosophical. And we had such great father and son chats. I mean, it wasn't even father and son. It was more like friends, and it was absolutely wonderful. He's such a lovely guy.
I understand, of course, that relationship is not a one-way street. That you have that with him, exactly. Not just because of what he is, but because of what you are and how you raised him.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for the recognition, rather. Yeah, that's the way it is. And we've always been close, with his sons. I mean, I'm Justin's favorite groupie. I go to as many of his gigs as possible. And with James, I love to go up the mountain with him and into sort of open spaces. Shame, that just reminds me, another flashback comes along. In fact, another two. Remember Kenny Silk from Feedback? David Bass. David Bass was also in that Canabash Barn reunion band. And Kenny, Bass and Kenny Silk were big buddies. And Kenny, he was in our law class, as you know, and I often used to chat to Kenny, and he always used to describe me. He said to me, "Graham, you're such an open spaces man," and he was just finger on the pulse. He knew exactly who I was and where I came from. And I always remember him saying that about me, and I really appreciated, just that insight. And just talking of music, there was another flashback I had, and I was yesterday I was up the mountain, going up the Cederberg next weekend, so I'm sort of training, keeping fit. And I thought, we're going to be talking to you tomorrow. Remember, you had that Cricklewood Green album, and I just remember Alvin Lee and Cricklewood Green. I mean, you were the guy who introduced everybody to that. And I think you also had that one Stones album, Rolling Stones, the one with the shattered windscreen mirror or something. It was their iconic album.
Yeah.
And I remember we all borrowed it and taped it. Some amazing music. Yeah. No, that was the memory that sort of came back to me while I was up there in the pouring rain doing a King Lear on the moors. Absolutely, yeah.
It's just on the
but Andrew, I think we kindred spirits in the sense that we are great music listeners. I mean, I also love classical music. I mean, I was brought up with that, actually. Yeah. My dad was a good pianist. He could sit down with records of Ashkenazi and play along, Rachmaninoff and Beethoven and the like. when he should have been out there earning his crust. But that's musicians for you, and the arty type. But
so were your parents,
yeah,
your dad too, was he a musician?
well, yeah, but he didn't earn a living from it. He was an architectural draftsman. He didn't qualify as an architect, but he could do everything that architects do. And that's how he did. He worked for various architectural firms. John Boyd's firm, as a matter of interest, he worked there. He worked for the UCT architects on campus, and then he went up to Durban and he lectured there on construction and building construction. He did a lot, and he came back and he worked for a building company, Willem Stronk.
But his love was for music.
And yeah, absolutely. And he'd go around to visit Dad, and on would go the classical music, and sit there and have a few whiskeys and listen to the music. It was great, really great. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, let me tell you that. Yeah, Justin, as a little guy, when he just started school, he had concentration problems and was diagnosed as well. They stuck him on Ritalin, and we took him off it because it was affecting him in such a bad way. So he went through school without medication.
In what way did it affect
But he played, I can't remember it. It made him all jittery and, tentative about stuff. And he just didn't react as he wasn't, his usual self. He was sort of withdrawn. Because a long time ago, I mean, it was what, 30, no, yeah, about 25, 30 years ago. Yeah. He's 34 now. They started off there. James went right through from sub A to matric, or what they got, grade 1 to grade 12. Justin got to grade 7, what's that, standard 5, and he knew I was a sort of ardent SACS old boy and all of that. And he was sitting at the breakfast table and he said to me, "Dad, I want to go to Westerford." And I sort of like took a step back, held my breath, and I said, "Yeah, you can do that." And he burst into tears. He had this idea that I was such an ardent SACS supporter that I couldn't get my head around, him going to Westerford. I said, "Of course you can go." And you know what? It was the best thing, for the reason that, whilst he would have had a great music education at SACS, John Walton was there, and he was brilliant. I mean, he used to write music for film scripts and the like, and a great all-round musician. But the Westerford music scene was also very strong, but they didn't have a great sax teacher. So he went to Beausoleil for his saxophone lessons, and there, luckily, he was taught by Bob Moday, who was the doyen of saxophone and saxophone teaching. I mean, he taught his son and daughter, Shannon. I don't know if you have heard of Shannon Moday. She, great jazz musician. So, he got taught by Bob Moday, and then he got to play in all the Beausoleil band, the wind band. And he had a great musical education at Beausoleil. I don't know if you know where Salisbury Road in Wynberg is. It's opposite the Wynberg Schule, where all the Rob Newstead and Mike and Pete had their barmies, It's opposite there. It's an old spook house about 3 stories high. And it just happens there. The music, the training, the violins. They've got this violin teacher there who teaches children not just to play the violin, but to get those violins to sing. It's to see their performances. They have a gala concert once a year in August, last weekend of August. And we used to go regularly and just hear these people perform. It's just absolutely amazing. So, that was the luck with Justin. And, I suppose leaving SACS, although he would have done well there, but he did even better out of. So it just goes to show. But, James fitted in there, maths and science, well taught there. And, he did well at Voss. So that was them. That's another great disappointment of my school career. I should have done history. But, I realized that our class was going to have John Ince as a history teacher. And I knew that as much as I loved John, I couldn't do history in his class. I remember saying to myself that if Andre is going to teach our class history, I'm doing history. And I ended up, Gary Fold said to me, Graham, come on, man, do geography. It's easy. It's a pushover. And I took the lazy route, and I took geography. And I should have done history. It's such a wonderful subject. And,
I did biology.
you only realize, did you? Ah, okay. Andrew, I remember John in saying to me, I'm disappointed that you're taking geography, and I couldn't tell him why I was to make the choice. As much as I didn't want to hurt the guy and tell him,
I remember Johnny Clark saying things
happened,
like.
No, I was going to say that as it so happened, I think that our class history teacher was in fact Andre Abrams at the end of the day. So I kind of missed out, and I should have changed, but I didn't. It sort of made my choice, and you stick with it anyway. But that's exactly, yes. And it was so easy to get him to go off on a tangent to discuss and debate current affairs.
Yeah.
And I remember him doing that, and that's what I always said about John. He's a great educator, but he wasn't a great teacher. And the debates in his class were just so inspiring. And I think that's why we really loved the guy, to open our minds and get us on our feet, debating and arguing and listening to other people. What a special person. Yeah. Tell me, the other book, another book that you might or should have on your book is that Heart of Darkness.
Yes.
Do you ever read that?
I do.
That is one of the most commentaries on life.
Yeah.
It's one of the most amazing books. And it's so applicable to South Africa today. We're in this heart of darkness. These people, you come from, the colonial, the colonies, not the colonial, Europe and, Britain, and you come to Africa and you compare the two, and, you get this heart of darkness experience, not as violent, but certainly the conflict. And, maybe, I can't remember the author's name again. He's
Joseph
actually
Conrad.
a Norwegian guy, I think.
Joseph Conrad.
Sorry?
Joseph
Yeah,
Conrad.
That's right. That's correct, yes. Yeah, I've heard him described as a racist because it was actually one of our varsity set works when I did English through uni. And, there was that criticism of him as being this colonialist, racist. But, there's still good stuff in that book. Yeah, I'm so busy. I don't think I've worked as hard in my life as I'm working now. Still going, and there's no ways that I can retire, unfortunately, but that's another. But you can't do it all the time, Andrew. That's the trouble. And it's, it is a beautiful area, but you got to work, and that's what I do, and that's what really held me back. Yeah, it was finding the time, because our weekends are just so busy, unbelievably busy. Sometimes I think, I'm glad it's Monday, the weekend's over. There's, a lot of social. He was at the reunion, and it was so lovely to connect with him and talk to him. It was really great. In fact, he was at the Canabash Barn concert reunion, and that's where I bumped into him, caught up with him, which is great. Just before. Yeah, he's coming for lunch, and I've been hiking with him as well, and listening to music and so on.
Hey, how's it from
it's been great to reconnect. No, definitely. I'll tell him about our interview. I just wanted to say, Andrew, thanks a hell of a lot for doing what you're doing. You're putting in so much time, and it shows commitment to, your fellow SACS guys. It's a really fantastic thing.